Hello and welcome to this introduction to my layer calculation tools for ProShow. These tools allow you to do things that you thought were impossible, extremely difficult, or very labor intensive to do. As such, they hold the potential to save you a lot of time and effort. Now let's go over the tools themselves here a little bit. First off, up here in the corner is the legend. You have a drop-down list which are identified with the orange outline around the yellow. You put your user information into any of these cells that are yellow, and your answers are going to be in the gray cells. Now the show information allows you to specify how large the slide is going to be. It can be 16:9, 4:3, or you can customize it to be whatever aspect that you want. Your save zone side is specified here as default what the ProShow program installs with. You can change your language. If you do change the language, be aware that you may need to change the column width to accommodate the change in wording. And also, if you do change, you'll notice that you will need to change the drop-down content to be appropriate to the language that you're using. The next one is the findings section. This findings section is where you enter the layer aspect in. You use this information here, the source setup values, to put in the values that came from the ProShow program itself. The results calculated will calculate the values that you didn't put in the source setup values. The layer reference values gives you a screen referenced position that is layer referenced. That is, if you let's say the corners of a layer, let's say 50-50. Well, you'll get a screen location for that. If you specify 100, then you'll get a screen location for that as well. It doesn't have to be on the layer itself. It just has to be referenced from the layer. Width and height information will give you information about the layer as far as its width and height goes in terms of non-rotated as well as 90 degrees rotation. Once you get a height and width, you can find the location of the various parts of the layer. That is to say, the sides, corners, and the layer center. You can rotate the layer on a corner or a side or the rotate center value. You can rotate it in 0 to 360 degrees in increments of 100 or increments of 90 degrees, and you can find the location of the layer itself or its corner or its side, and you can do this for the vertical tilt, horizontal tilt, and a regular rotation. Further, using the align here, you can align the layer or a portion of the layer to some screen location. You identify the layer center or its corner or its side, and you can align that identified part of the layer to whatever screen location, which is right here, that you want. The layer support information supports the findings here, but it's at 100% zoom. So if I enter in a layer aspect, I get some information here as far as the relationship to the layer to the screen. I get the aspect of the layer, and all this gets populated too. It tells me some stuff about the layer relative to the screen. It shows whether or not it is larger or smaller than the show aspect. It gives me the layer width and height. It gives me the frame scale, or the layer scale, and then tells me whether I have a part of the layer that's outside the frame or if I'm not using up the entire frame at 100%. And it will tell me where that unused portion is or what part of the outside that it's on. In this particular case, I have an unused portion of the layer on the left and right sides. If I go to fill frame, then I am extending beyond the frame by this amount. Now, over here where we put this aspect in, as long as these remain 0, as long as the source set values remain 0, I will get width and height information at 100% zoom. So I can tell what the non-rotated and the rotated size of that layer is going to be. And then also, as I said before, these become valid. As long as I have a height and width, I can find locations of the layer that's rotated on a side or a corner and find that information. And I can perform the align here function. It does all of the scales that ProShow has with the exception of stretch to frame. If you want a scale that is stretch to frame, simply specify your layer as having the same size as the slide. But you can do fill frame, fit to frame, fit to safe zone, and fill safe zone. Let's go over here to the equal size changes. This tool is useful for creating layers that you're going to use as outlines, borders, or simple frames or shadows for other layers. And it allows you to create equal amounts of change on each axis. You can specify that change starting as a percent value, a change from the beginning value, or you can do a start and end. So, for instance, you give in each case, you give it a starting zoom. And then you specify a change that you want as far as percent here. And in this case, it would be an ending value of zoom. And this, before we can use this tool, we also have to specify or identify what the layer aspect is. And then when you specify it, you'll get the percent change for each axis, and you'll get the starting and ending, or you get the ending zooms. You can specify the change from the x-axis or the y-axis. It's up to you. And likewise over here. The percent change is useful in constant value modifiers, and modifiers will use the existing zoom and make changes to that existing zoom as a percent of that zoom. And that's why we have the modifier nomenclature above here. The next one is the modifier rotation calculation. You specify what your degree change is, and it'll tell you what that change is going to be in a phase or modifier value. Likewise, you can specify the modifier value, and it will give you the change in degrees. Phase changes are only really useful between the values of 0 and 1. But you can specify it in any way, shape, or form that you want. If I did 50, it tells me what the effective rotation is going to be. Typical waveforms of that are used in ProShow, though, are the cosine and sine waves, and you really can't tell the difference between a phase change of 1 and 5, for instance. So you really only want to use between 0.0 and 1. But You can also specify what your beginning rotation is, and that adds to the existing value. In modifiers, a rotation is going to add to the existing rotation that you have set up. Plus, a modifier does not provide you a direct rotation in degrees. It provides you a value that is a percent of a one rotation. So 100% of rotation is 360 degrees. And that's why a value modifier of 25, which is 1/4, is only going to give you 90 degrees. So this is just a useful tool that, for those who are going to use modifiers. Quick and easy way to convert your value into either a degrees or phase change or modifier value. And a cropping tool is useful in that you can provide the aspect that you're going to crop your image to and the dimensions of the image that you are going to crop. And it will tell you what you're going to need to crop each axis to and how much of a change that is going to be. You can see here that it's got a ratio 1:5, so it's a verification point. This down here tells you what your actual cropping values are going to be. Now this is important in that because what you can do is you can convert this 3:2 axis aspect to a 2:3. So instead of trying to figure out which goes which, your value is down here. So now I'm cropping this wide image layer to a portrait layer. And this is what the aspect would be. Now if I wanted to do a portrait to portrait, I can do it this way too. I don't have to re-enter the information. All I have to do is invert it. It saves me some typing and potential for errors. That's it in a nutshell.